Hey there, welcome back to the channel. Picture this. You're standing on the edge of a big decision. Bags packed, heart pounding just a little, staring down one of life's heaviest shifts, moving into a nursing home. Maybe it's you taking that step. Maybe it's someone you love more than words can say. But either way, it's a moment that's equal parts hope, dread, and maybe a sliver of relief. You're hoping for some help, a safety net after years of pushing through on your own. You're dreading the unknown, the what-ifs that swirl in your head, and maybe you're relieved, just a touch, that the daily grind of juggling everything solo, meals, meds, stairs that feel like mountains, might finally ease up. You've done your homework, right? You've walked the tours, those shiny hallways with fresh paint and friendly smiles, flipped through the brochures with their glossy photos of happy folks playing cards or sipping tea at bingo night, and you're thinking, okay, this could work. It's a fresh start, a soft landing, a place to catch my breath. You sign the dotted line, haul in your boxes, and step through those big double-dual doors with a mix of nerves and optimism, expecting a smooth ride, or at least a decent one. But then, bam, reality slams in, and it's not quite the cozy picture they painted on the welcome mat. Things start popping up, little cracks at first, then bigger jolts, stuff that catches you off guard in ways you never saw coming, stuff that makes you think, man, I wish someone had told me this before I got here. That's where I'm at today, because we're diving headfirst into something raw, real, and a little rough around the edges. Nursing home nightmares. 5 truths I wish I'd known before moving in. This isn't about scaring you off or throwing shade at every facility out there. There are good ones, great ones even, doing incredible work every day. But it's about pulling back the curtain on the hard stuff, the gritty truths that don't make it into the sales pitch or the polished family handbook. And don't worry, I'm not just here to dump the heavy load and bounce. I'm walking you through what I learned the hard way, how to spot these traps early, and how to navigate them so you or your loved ones can still carve out a space of peace, dignity, and even some unexpected joy in this chapter. So grab a coffee, maybe a notepad if you're feeling it, settle into your spot, and let's talk about what's really waiting behind those doors. Because knowing this up front could have saved me a mountain of stress, a few sleepless nights, and a whole lot of if-onlys, and I'm betting it can do the same for you. If this is already hitting close to home, if you've got a story bubbling up, or you're just here to soak it in, drop a quick 1 in the comments. I'd love to know you're riding this wave with me, ready to unpack it all. Let's kick off with a truth that blindsided me right from the jump. Something I didn't see coming until it was staring me in the face. The loss of control hits way harder than you'd ever expect. You walk into a nursing home with this mental checklist, thinking, I've got this figured out. I'll keep my routine, my little quirks, the stuff that makes me me. Maybe you're imagining your favorite armchair parked by the window with a perfect view of the trees, your morning tea brewed just the way you like it, 2 sugars, a splash of milk, or picking what's on your plate for dinner. Maybe a little extra gravy, because why not? You've spent a lifetime calling the shots, building your days around what works for you, and you figure that'll carry over, maybe with a few tweaks. But then you get there, and whoa, it's a wake-up call. Your schedule's not yours anymore, not even close. Breakfast rolls out at 7 a.m. sharp, whether you're a morning bird or the type who doesn't crack an eye till 9. Lights out at 10 p.m., even if you've always been a night owl who thrives after dark. Showers locked in for Tuesday and Friday. No budging, no, can we make it Wednesday instead? It's not that they're trying to be harsh or strip you down, it's just how the system's built. A machine humming along for efficiency, not your personal rhythm. For me, it was my mom, a woman who'd spent 70 years dancing to her own beat. She'd sleep till 10, shuffle to the kitchen in her robe, brew her tea slow while flipping through a paperback, maybe whip up some eggs if the mood struck. We moved her into a place we thought was golden, clean as a whistle, staff with warm smiles, good vibes all around, and I figured she'd settle in smooth, keep her groove with a little help. But a week in, she called me, voice trembling over the line. I can't even make my own tea. They tell me when to eat, when to sleep, when to move, like I'm a kid again, not a grown woman. It cut me deep. She wasn't just losing her house, she was losing her say, her grip on the little choices that kept her grounded. The staff were sweet, don't get me wrong, always a good morning Mrs. Clare with a smile. But the rules were set in stone, meals on a strict clock, activities you couldn't skip without a fuss, a daily flow she couldn't bend to fit her. I saw it play out. Her first morning, she tried sleeping in, missed breakfast, and they wouldn't heat her a plate, said it'd disrupt the kitchen. She sat there, hungry, staring at a cold muffin till lunch, and I could see the spark in her dimming. What I wish I'd known before we signed those papers? You've got to dig way deeper than the surface. Don't just nod at the pretty lobby or the activity calendar on the wall. Ask the nitty-gritty, the stuff they don't advertise. Can she eat when she's hungry, not just at 7? Can she skip the sing-along if she's not up for it? How much wiggle room is there for her to still feel like herself? Some places flex more than others. Some let you keep a mini fridge, set your own wake-up, opt out of group stuff without a guilt trip. And finding that out up front could have eased her into it softer, kept her from feeling like she'd been handed a rule book instead of a home. If you're facing this move, push for a trial run. Spend a day or two, not just an hour tour, and watch the real rhythm. Can you tweak it? Or is it a conveyor belt? We got lucky later. After some back and forth, Mom's place let her keep a kettle in her room, a little electric one she could plug in whenever she wanted. It was a small win, but a big deal. She'd sit there brewing her tea, smiling like she'd won a battle. It's not about fighting every rule or turning it into your old house. It's about carving out a corner of control, a sliver of me that keeps your spirit from slipping away. Next up is a truth that sneaks in slow, wraps around you like a fog, and stings deeper than you'd ever guess. The loneliness can be absolutely brutal, even when you're surrounded by people every single day. You'd think a nursing home's alive with action, folks shuffling through the halls, staff buzzing in and out, group activities like crafts or sing-alongs filling the air with chatter. And yeah, there's noise. Chairs scraping, voices overlapping, the clink of trays at lunch. But it's not the same as connection. Not even close. After 70 or 80, you've got a lifetime of bonds in your pocket. Friends who've heard your best stories a dozen times and still laugh. Family who know your quirks inside out. Neighbors who'd wave over the fence with a "how's it going?" that felt like home. Then you land here and suddenly you're surrounded by strangers. People who don't know your past, your punchlines, the way your eyes crinkle when you're happy. My Uncle Bob, 78, was my first taste of this. He'd been a social king his whole life, the guy who'd hold court at the barber shop, cracking jokes, swapping tales about his days as a mechanic, his booming laugh filling any room he walked into. When we moved him in, I thought he'd be golden. The place had game nights with poker and checkers, movie afternoons with popcorn, even a little garden club where they'd pot plants together. I figured, this is Bob's wheelhouse. He'll have a crew in no time. But a month later, he pulled me aside during a visit, eyes duller than I'd ever seen, and said, "I'm lonelier here than I ever was rattling around my empty house." It floored me. The other residents were nice enough, sure, but some were too frail to chat, their words slurring or fading mid-sentence. Others kept to themselves, heads down, lost in their own worlds. And the staff, God bless them, were running ragged, too busy changing sheets or passing meds to sit and shoot the breeze about Elvis or carburetors. Bob would shuffle to bingo, sit through it with a forced grin, then roll back to his room feeling invisible. No one knew he'd rebuilt engines for 40 years, loved Hound Dog on repeat, or had a laugh that could wake a coma patient. He'd call me some nights, voice low. It's like I'm here, but I'm not here, you know? What I wish I'd known before we picked that spot. It's not just about bodies in the building or events on a schedule. You've got to scout the real vibe, the heartbeat of the place. Are folks clicking, building bonds, or just coexisting like ships passing in the night? Is there a real shot at friendship, or is it all surface level hello and see ya? I should have asked the staff point blank. How do you help people connect? What if he's shy? Do you step in? Are there small groups, not just big loud ones? Some places do it right. Pair newbies with a buddy who shows them the ropes. Host coffee chats with 3 or 4 folks instead of 20. Little things that bridge the gap between stranger and friend. We got lucky later. A volunteer started swinging by, an older guy who'd worked on cars too. He'd sit with Bob, play old Elvis tunes on a portable speaker, swap stories about rusty bolts and road trips. It wasn't a crowd, but it was enough. Bob's laugh started creeping back. If you're scoping out a place, dig in deep. What's the social pulse here? How do you fight the lonely? And don't let family fade. Call often. Visit with a coffee in hand. Bring a cousin or a grandkid to keep their world alive. It's not about fixing every quiet moment. It's about threading in enough you to cut through that fog, keep the isolation from swallowing them whole. Here's a truth that'll twist your gut and make you clench your fists if you're not ready for it. The care isn't always what it seems, or what you shelled out your hard-earned cash for. Those brochures? They're slick, promising round-the-clock attention, skilled nurses who'll treat you like gold, a team that's got your back no matter what. You see the price tag, hand over your savings or your parents' nest egg, sign the papers with a shaky hand, and think, okay, they're in good hands. This is top tier, they'll be safe. Then you settle in, and the cracks start showing, sometimes small, sometimes gaping, and you realize the care's not matching the hype. My dad's move was my crash course in this. He'd had a stroke a year back, couldn't feed himself without help, needed assistance dressing, getting to the bathroom, the works. We picked a place with a glowing rep, 5-star reviews online, testimonials singing praises, a cost that made me think, this has to be quality, right? First week I was sold. Clean rooms with soft lighting, polite staff who'd nod and say, we've got this. A dining hall that smelled like fresh bread instead of bleach. I'd visit, see Dad with a tray in front of him, a nurse checking his chart, and think, we did good, he's set. But then I started popping in off hours, not the polished daytime tours when everyone's on their best behavior, but random evenings, early mornings, times when the mask slips. One night, I walked in at 8 p.m. Dad's call light had been buzzing for 20 minutes. No one came. He'd spilled his water trying to reach it himself, sat there soaked, shirt clinging to his chest, looking small and lost, till I grabbed a towel. Another day, his meds were late, hours late, because the nurse was juggling 30 residents solo, darting from room to room like a pinball, sweat on her brow. They weren't mean, weren't lazy, just swamped, stretched so thin they couldn't keep up. I'd hear aides whispering in the hall, we're short again tonight, and my stomach would sink. What I wish I'd known before we locked in? Don't trust the shiny surface, dig into the bones of it. Ask the hard, unsexy questions. What's your staff-to-resident ratio, not just on paper, but at 3 a.m.? How many nurses on the graveyard shift? What's the turnover? Do people stick around, or are you training newbies every week? Who's on call when it's quiet? I should have done recon. Dropped by unannounced before we signed. Watch the real flow, not the staged show with extra hands on deck. If you're shopping around, do it. Visit at odd hours, peek past the lobby, chat with families in the parking lot, not just the admissions guy with the clipboard. We pushed later. Got Dad a med alarm that texted me if it was late, hired an extra aide for a few hours a day to bridge the gaps. It cost more, broke my heart to see it, but it worked. He got fed, got his pills, felt seen. It's not about expecting a flawless dream team. It's about knowing the weak spots and shoring them up before they turn into nightmares that keep you up at night. Now, let's hit a truth that's tough to face because it's so personal. Your stuff, your identity, can vanish faster than you'd ever imagine. You move in with treasures that carry your story. A faded photo of your kids on their first bikes, a quilt your mom stitched with her own hands, that beat-up recliner you've sunk into for 30 years, patched but perfect. You figure they'll keep you grounded, make this strange new place feel a little like home, a tether to who you are. But then you get there and bam, space is tight, rules are stricter than a drill sergeant, and suddenly your room's a blank slate with a hospital bed, a plastic nightstand, and a curtain that doesn't even match your vibe. My Aunt Rita, 80, was my lesson here. She brought her life in boxes, a whole history packed up, framed pics of her grandkids grinning at the beach, a little radio that had played Sinatra through every Sunday supper, her knitting bag stuffed with half-finished scarves, all stuff that screamed Rita loud and clear. Day one, she rolled in with a smile, ready to set up her nook. Then the staff hit her with it. Sorry, no room. Fire codes, safety regs, we can't have clutter. Half her things got stashed in a closet down the hall, the rest sent back with me. Her radio, her frames, even that quilt folded up in my trunk. Her room looked like a budget motel, sterile white walls, a thin blanket, a chair that wasn't hers, and she'd sit there, hands in her lap, staring at nothing, saying, "This isn't mine. I don't belong here." It gutted me. She wasn't just losing her apartment, she was losing herself, piece by piece, stripped down to a number on a door. I'd visit, see her tracing the air where her pictures should have been, and feel like I'd failed her. What I wish I'd known before we picked that spot. Check the space rules down to the inch. Ask, what can we bring? How much fits, really fits, not just maybe? Can we hang stuff, swap curtains, tweak the vibe to make it ours? Some places bend. Let you paint a wall a soft blue, hang a few frames if they're secure, keep a chair if it passes muster. Others don't budge an inch, locked in safety first mode. I should have pushed harder from the start, snuck in those photos, fought tooth and nail for her quilt, measured every corner on the tour instead of nodding at the cozy room line. We did later. After weeks of haggling, got a small shelf approved, hung 3 frames, tucked her knitting bag by the bed. It wasn't her old den, but it was cozier, warmer. She'd smile, touch the pictures, feel a little more there. If you're prepping for this, do the legwork. Tour the exact room, not a model. Bring a tape measure, test the limits, pack what matters most, and fight for it. It's not about hauling the whole house. It's about anchoring your soul in a place that's still foreign, keeping your story from fading into the beige walls. Last Truth is a slow, grinding burn that'll test every ounce of your heart. The guilt and grief don't just fade away. They shift, settle in, and stick around in ways you can't shake. You move in or move someone in thinking, this is the right call, it's safe, they'll be okay here. Clinging to the logic that got you through the decision. The stairs were too much, the falls too frequent, the nights alone too risky. You pick a place, set it up, walk away from that first day telling yourself, they're good. I did what I had to. But the second those doors close behind you, the what-ifs swarm like bees. Did I give up too soon? Could I have kept them home 1 more year? Are they mad at me, hating me for this? If you're the one moving in, it's flipped. I'm a burden now. I've failed my family. This is the end of me. My grandma, 85, was my teacher here. She'd taken a bad fall, couldn't climb stairs anymore, and we couldn't hoist her up daily without risking our backs or hers. We found a solid spot, bright windows, active vibe, staff who seemed to care, and I thought, she'll adjust. She's tough as nails, always has been. First few visits, she'd grin, tell me about the pudding at lunch, and I'd breathe easy. But then it shifted. She'd whisper, I miss my garden, or I hate being a bother to you all, her voice cracking, and I'd leave wrecked, gut churning with guilt that I couldn't fix it, grieving her old life right there beside her as she stared out the window at a parking lot instead of her roses. She wasn't wrong to feel it. Those flowers were her pride, her hands in the dirt every spring. And I wasn't wrong to second-guess every choice that landed us here. What I wish I'd known before we made the leap. That guilt and grief are part of the package. They don't vanish with a good facility or a sunny room. They linger, ebb, flow, and you've got to face them head on. Talk it out. Don't dodge the hard stuff. Don't plaster on a fake smile. I started sitting with Grandma longer, letting her vent about the marigolds she couldn't plant, crying when she did, not hiding it. We brought in planters for her window, tiny pots with herbs, not her sprawling beds but hers to tend. She'd water them, fuss over them, find a flicker of purpose. If you're staring down this road, brace for the feels, lean into them, not away. Ask, how do you feel here, really? And listen, even if it stings. Visit often, bring stories from home, a cutting from their yard, a kid's drawing. Keep their world alive, not buried. We'd talk about her old recipes, laugh about the time she burned the roast, and it lightened her eyes, even just for a minute. It's not about erasing the hurt or pretending it's all okay. It's about walking through it together, holding space for the messy, beautiful truth of it all. These 5 truths: losing control that cuts deep, loneliness that haunts even in a crowd, care that falls short of the promise, stuff that vanishes and takes your identity with it, guilt and grief that shift but never leave. They're the nightmares I didn't see coming, the shadows lurking behind the nursing home glow. They hit me hard, taught me harder, and looking back, I wish I'd had this map before stepping in. Could have asked sharper questions, pushed for more, held tighter to what mattered. But knowing them now, you've got a head start. Dig deeper, scout smarter, fight for the pieces that keep you or your loved ones whole. It's not about dodging every rough patch or finding a fairy tale fix. It's about stepping in with eyes wide open, steering through the bumps with grit and grace, keeping dignity, connection, a little fight alive no matter what. If you're still here, soaking up these hard-earned lessons, drop a 2. In the comments, what's one truth that socked you in the gut, or a tip you'd toss into the mix? Share it below. Your story might light a path for someone else stumbling through this. Loving this real talk? Smash that like button, hit subscribe, ring the bell. Let's keep this going strong. Catch you in the comments.